Hi there, I'm Shawn Verbrugghe. Thank you for tuning in with me today to learn about profiting through energy management. I'm coming to you from beautiful Asheville, North Carolina, where I'm lucky enough to call home, and we love making and drinking beer. So today, even though this is a pre-recorded message, I will be moderating live. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat box and I will answer them as we go. So now I want to share with you an idea that I believe has changed my life in some really cool ways. This idea that I've witnessed throughout my career with hundreds of companies is that energy efficiency and renewables can dynamically transform a business. So we'll talk about what this means and what it would take to make this possible for your organization. This isn't just for folks with older buildings. If you don't know how to measure how efficient your building is, then this presentation is for you. I'm going to diverge for a second. A few years ago, I read a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. It's basically a marketing book. The idea is to define your purpose or your why in life or business. And it was at that moment that I realized my life's work being to promote sustainability and energy efficiency. And I share this with you because I hope that throughout this presentation you might find that this connects with you and your why. So I don't think it matters if you believe in climate change or you're a tree hugger or you love coal-fired power plants. I think what does matter is that as parents and grandparents and leaders in our community, that we make the most of our Earth's resources and we help eliminate pollution. And these are coined as doing the right thing, but coincidentally, they make really good sense for our bottom lines, which is exactly what we'll talk here about today. So many of you have seen this symbol. This is known as the P3 or triple bottom line. And the aim here is to optimize profitability while remaining a good corporate citizen.
Most of the beer wholesalers I've met have already mastered their internal processes for distribution, so it's safe to assume that you have invested a great deal of time already whittling away at your top operating expenses. So if your company is still looking at your energy budget as a fixed expense, I'd like you to consider reframing that mindset. The way we energy finance geeks look at it is that every business has an annual energy budget that can be safely and predictably used as an investment fund to replace old equipment and reduce maintenance. It basically just boils down to mitigating risk. And we'll talk more about the financials of energy projects as we go. And we'll also review the new alternative funding mechanisms that are literally changing the face of commercial energy projects and how they get implemented. So now we're going to transition the scenery into some informational slides. Here we have beer bucket number 1, which is basically social responsibility and sustainability goals. And here's just a look at what's happening in the industry. So when we look at AB InBev, their goal is to reduce their CO2 emissions by 25% and basically purchase 100% of their electricity through renewable energy, all by the year 2025. They've also adopted the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. Molson Coors, they've committed to reducing their carbon emissions by 50%, literally cutting them in half in the next 5 years. They've also committed to signing the Paris Climate Agreement. And then you have craft brewers like Sierra Nevada and New Belgium, the folks who are setting up shop in my backyard, doing all kinds of things to be sustainable. And they really want their distributors to be riding the same train. So then we take a peek at the corporate world. This number might be a few months old, but there's over 100 of the Fortune 500 companies are dedicated to reducing their energy use by at least 25% in the next 10 years. Many of them have much more aggressive goals. And so we ask, why? Why is this all happening? The obvious answer is reduce carbon emissions. Helps with cleaner air, and all of those things. But improved optics, that meaning being noticed as a company who is on board to help the people and the planet. It's a big reason. People want to get behind this. And let's not forget the increase in real estate valuations, right? So at the end of the day, a building that pollutes less, costs less to run, and therefore is worth more. So now we'll kind of spin this conversation to talk about what's happening closer to home at your facilities. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that as our aging workforce continues to turn over and eventually become replaced with a younger generation of millennials, we not only want to attract top talent and bring people in that care, but we want to retain these employees and help them grow within our organizations. This is interesting. There was a study, 2018 Pew study, showed that 81% of millennials believe that the planet is indeed warming, and that 65% of those millennials say that human activity is the primary cause. So this just gives you an idea of what their mindset is and what kind of companies that they're looking to become part of. And so we'll take a step over to EnergyStar. We've all seen EnergyStar appliances. Some of us have EnergyStar homes. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that EnergyStar has a program for buildings. And you can get your building EnergyStar certified if it tests and scores at a certain level. And so basically, we'll talk more about the process of that later. Just imagine having an EnergyStar building and having that certification or that plaque right on the front, right when you walk in, and how that might make you feel, or what kind of impact it could have on people visiting your business. It may be nothing to most, but it could be everything to one person that really matters. So in summary of bucket number one, I think it's obvious that this is the direction of companies that have vision for the future in creating sustainability goals, defining their energy management plans, and becoming more socially responsible. I feel as though many of you already relate to this section, and seeing how the industry is quickly moving more and more in this direction, I think it's just a matter of time before all of your distributors are taking a harder look at energy management and how it can play into their company. So as we move forward, I guess I would just ask you to think about what sustainability and energy management means in your business. Okay, now here we have bucket number two. So hold on tight, because bucket number two is the exciting part of what I do, which is improving the workplace. We, as energy professionals, look to make safer work environments. We look to create happier, healthier work environments where employee morale is boosted. I think employees want to be in a facility that has all the feelings that the employer cares about them. And energy projects are one good way to do that. It makes me think of the wireless headsets used for picking and how that's changed so many of your businesses from a functional level and also from an employee productivity level, and probably reduced a bunch of frustrations, I would imagine. So I have what I would call a fun story for you. I call it my Imagine story. So imagine with me the future of your beer distribution facility. I'd ask you to close your eyes, but I don't know you well enough. So just imagine with me what is possible, and then we'll take a look at the financials behind these possibilities. So first off, you want to understand the performance of your building. So you get it tested and scored. And it takes one of your facility people just a few hours to gather all the information. You get a decent score. It's 65 out of 100. So you're curious, what might be possible? Then for about $50 a month, someone installs, which is basically a Fitbit for your building. You can easily see how much energy you're using, where it's all used, and when you're using it the most. It gives you insights into anomalies in energy usage that can help prevent system failures and downtime. And using comparative analysis data, it tells you what systems are not efficient, actually gives you a list of actionable steps to retrofit or replace equipment, and quite even possibly a list of suppliers you might want to research. Finally, after you've consulted with some of these suppliers and your energy solutions provider, you've agreed upon some smart upgrades to your building and facility. And here's where I think it gets fun. So you wake up, it's the coldest day of the year. So with a few clicks on your phone, this is from your living room, you bump up the temperature and the humidity in the front offices of your business. So it's comfy when everyone arrives. As you head into work, it's early and it's still dark out. You pull up to your newly lit parking lot and the lights start to brighten as your car approaches. The LED lights were dimmed all evening to save electricity, yet still provide security, but now it looks like a Home Depot parking lot. And the best part is that flagpole, it's radiantly lit because they finally changed out that terrible old fixture, and you won't have to worry about it for another 20 years. As you walk into the building, the lights in the lobby are a blue and gold scene. And these are the colors of the brewery that's coming by today, so you can hopefully move forward in securing their distribution business. The ambiance is soft and inviting, and it will provide a warm welcome to your guests when they arrive. Just before the main corridor entrance, there's a tablet that quickly recognizes you and takes your temperature, and it logs that information and allows you access into the rest of the building. On the way to your office, you see a big screen on the wall that shows the current building energy consumption, and it shows off the energy, water, and gas reductions you've made over the past few months. You walk into your office, the lights come on automatically with a warm, white color temperature so that your eyes and your brain more easily accomplish your morning routine. Now it's 9 a.m. You notice that the lights in your office have dimmed as the sun has come through the windows. Just one more visual cue that your business is more efficient with smart building controls. Okay, so you've got an hour until the big meeting and the warehouse tour, so you go check on everything. On the way to the production office, you see Paul, your maintenance manager. He pulls up the energy dashboard and shows you that the new forklift chargers and the cloud-based metering system are showing a 25% reduction in energy usage, and they're charging in much less time. And he's happy that the buzzing in the charger bay is finally gone. He also shares with you enthusiasm about the new temperature logging system that automatically sends monthly reports to the powers that be. And when you ask him how he likes the new compressors out back, he smiles and says, "Good thing we did those. Did you know that we spent almost as much in maintenance on those things over the past 3 years as it would have cost to buy a new compressor?" You think, wow, that is a good thing. Then you do a lap with Bob. Bob is your operations manager, and he'll be joining you in the meeting today. He takes you into the draft cooler, and the humidity issue has been addressed through the defrost on-demand system, which will also be cutting your kW usage daily. As you guys walk through the CEW, Rudy, who is on the forklift, stops you and thanks you for how quiet the warehouse now is, since you've upgraded the evaporator motors and controls. He says, "I can actually hear myself think now." Bob goes on to mention how you can hear the forklift wheels along the floor before you see him now, and how he believes this will increase safety in the warehouse. He goes on to say that Everyone loves the new high-speed roll-up doors, that they are a game changer. Back up to the lobby to await your guests, and you talk to Sally in the front office. She says, "Whatever you did up here is great. My toes aren't freezing anymore, and the office staff is starting to turn off those little electric heaters under their desk." You say, "It must be that solar hot air system that was put in to provide free heat where we need it in the winter and hot water in the summer months." She congratulates you for being so wise. The folks from the brewery, Susie and Mark, arrive, and you give them a facility tour, highlighting your capabilities and processes and introducing them to your employees. Susie boasts about the EV charging station in the parking lot and tells you how their company just shifted to all electric vehicles. She inquires about the EnergyStar badge on the front of the building and the process you went through to get certified, and goes on to state the sustainability goals within their organization. Mark asks how many kW the PV solar system is, and you tell him that it's a 10 kW, and that you would have gone bigger, but you decided to do a reflective roof system, and that's all that would fit on the property. Then you tell him about the on-site cogeneration system that was installed to supplement the solar and the grid power, and that it actually acts as a backup in case of power outages. The meeting moves into the conference room, where your CFO and your general manager are there to greet them. You notice that the annoying glare that used to be on the table is now gone, probably due to the window tint they did when they went through the building envelope to bring you into the spec for the 21st century. Towards the end of a good meeting, you bring up to Tom, the CFO, Susie's mention about sustainability. Tom's eyes light up. He says, "We've reduced our energy usage by 52% and our power bills by 89% every month for the last 3 months. And surprisingly enough, we didn't have 1 cent of capital outlay to make all these facility upgrades." He hands over a case study to the brewers that highlights all of the energy upgrades and the CO2 reductions that will occur as a result of the energy management plan that your business put in place. They are impressed, and you win them over. After they're gone, your team discusses looking back and never imagining how good this energy endeavor could have gone. Can you imagine if we would have done this 4 or 5 years ago? This would have all been paid for, and we'd be adding an extra $140,000 per year to the bottom line, Tom says. Bob adds, "Yeah, and now I don't have to keep telling everyone to turn the lights off like they're my children." You get ready to leave for the night and look at the indoor air quality dashboard on your computer. It shows the perfect blend of oxygen and CO2 in the building. No viruses or pathogens detected, low particulate matter. This all means that your employees are breathing healthy, clean air. As you walk out, the lights turn off behind you. The thermostats self-regulate based upon occupancy, and you leave with a knowing that your investment was a good one and a feeling that you are helping pave the way for a more sustainable future. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, and it just kind of shows you that what is possible. And I guess the important takeaway is that all of these things are possible now. And the great thing is that all of these improvements make for happier employees who are safer and more comfortable. And if they're done right, the savings of implementing these efficiency and renewable solutions completely pay for the project cost. Just remember that existing energy budget, and then we'll tie this all together in the third and final bucket, which breaks down the investment scenarios that are available to increase profitability. So this is a good time to bring up utility incentives. Incentives notoriously drive a good number of projects to get funded and implemented. Most utilities across the country offer some sort of incentives nowadays, but not all. There are 2 types of incentives. One is called prescriptive and the other is custom. Prescriptive has buckets that offer X amount of dollars towards a unit retrofitted or replaced. For example, $50 per LED light fixture, and then you can add $20 per an added occupancy sensor. A custom incentive normally pays for much more of the percentage of the project, and they're typically used for more complex energy projects. For example, replacing motors, and adding a control system. For custom, utilities offer X amount of dollars per kW or kWh saved over typically a year. I've seen some custom incentives that pay for 20%, 50%, up to 100% of project costs, but they're typically capped at 50%. Please make sure that you are applying for incentives prior to starting projects and that you receive a fund reservation letter stating how much the utility will be giving you back upon project completion. Now, custom incentives can be tricky, and I recommend working with an energy service provider prior to submitting that application. Prescriptive, usually the utility rep can help you out with those. And one last soundbite before we get into funding mechanisms, and this is on metering. Many years ago, I was in a meeting with an operations manager for a Fruit of the Loom facility in somewhere in North Carolina. He had hundreds of large machines that spun cotton and a very complex boiler and chiller system for their process. He was a very unassuming older guy, kind of reminded me of Santa Claus. I asked him how he was able to manage keeping this whole thing working and also meet their corporate sustainability goals to reduce energy usage by 5% year over year. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, "If you can't measure it, you can't save it." Nearly 10 years ago, this is before metering was even a thing, this guy was submetering every energy-consuming device in his facility. He knew if anything wasn't running right. He was able to use that data to find inefficiencies in his building. Now, he's the definition of an asset to the company. Nowadays, you don't need Santa Claus. There's very simple metering systems that can affordably monitor everything in your workshop. And using a wireless cell connection, send that data right to a cloud dashboard so that you and whoever your energy professional is can have digestible data to help make action plans and continue to monitor and alert your team about the building systems. Metering systems and retro commissioning are, hands down, the most valuable tools to help navigate you on your energy efficiency journey. Okay, here we are at bucket number 3, increasing profitability and energy financing. There's some facts for you. Did you know that every $1 invested in energy efficiency yields $2.84 in savings over the life of the project? And that cutting your energy usage by 35% is equivalent to increasing your bottom line by something like 2 to 4%. We did a quick survey of past beer distributor clients across the country and found that electric bills averaged about $150,000 annually. And using that number above, this lends to nearly $50,000 directly towards your bottom line each and every year. Now, I'm no rocket surgeon, but I do think that those are some impressive numbers. And a quick sidebar, here's something to consider. For photovoltaic solar, even if your roof or land isn't suitable for an array, your utility may offer the option to purchase solar, and it would be solar generated from a utility or a community solar farm in your area. So it's worth taking a look at. Now, earlier, when we talked about these large companies' sustainability initiatives, it's clear that their goals will reduce carbon emissions and environmental impacts. But the question is, would they be doing all this if these weren't good investments? In my 10 plus years experience energy consulting on large projects with Fortune 500 companies, I've had plenty of conversations with plant managers up to high-level executives about investing in energy efficiency and renewables. They all agree that it's low risk and they're making it part of their long-term investment strategy. The next slide highlights the funding mechanisms that allow energy management plans to materialize more quickly in a structured way. Going back only 10 years, 90% of all the projects we saw come to fruition were funded with capital budgets, and about 10% of them were financed through a lease or a term loan. The result of that was that many good projects were left on the table. Very few actually got funded and installed. Fast forward to today, off-balance sheet financing, such as energy as a service, PACE financing, and on-bill financing are replacing CapEx budgets and term financing. I believe that this uprise in alternative funding for energy projects for the private sector is due mainly to the ability to meter and to monitor energy savings in real time and extract that day-to-day financing savings to lower the risk of these models. First off, we'll talk about energy as a service, which encapsulates lighting as a service, solar as a service, and energy efficiency as a service. I think of this being similar to going to Verizon to get your new iPhone that would cost you about $1,000 if you bought it. But I don't know anyone that purchases them anymore. They take out a service contract for a couple of years until it's paid off. The difference here is the energy savings pays for the service contract for a number of months that equate to the payback period. In these models, there's no upfront capital required, and contractually, the service provider owns and maintains the equipment for the term of the contract. So if there's an issue, they fix it. Terms are flexible, and there's no caps on project size. And if you want to extend the term of the agreement, you can actually generate income on a monthly basis. Another model is PACE, which stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing, and it offers a simple means of financing energy efficiency upgrades, disaster resiliency improvements, water conservation, or renewable installations for businesses and homeowners. PACE loans are paid by additional assessments on the property owner's property taxes over an agreed upon term, which can be anywhere from 5 to 25 years. And since energy costs are simultaneously lowered, this can provide you with massive net gains. Also, because equipment and the loan is attached to your property, you can sell the property, leaving the debt to be paid through the property taxes assessed on the subsequent owners. PACE is available in about half the states in the US at this time, and the programs are administered through the county. The third funding mechanism, and maybe the best of them, is on-bill financing, OBF. This is exactly what it sounds like. Some utilities have a fund that you can use to fund your energy projects, and the savings get tacked onto the bill over a term determined by the length of the project payback. These models are super convenient and simple to use, and they offer low to zero interest rates, and typically terms of 2 to 15 years, and they're transferable to new property owners. The downside is that they're not widely available, and they're usually capped around $350,000 for projects. So let's quickly look at the benefits of these asset-based lending mechanisms. The obvious ones are that they reduce energy usage. They can help you reach your sustainability goals, and they'll upgrade your facility equipment. Now, the remarkable side benefits are that, number one, they allow the generation of operational savings if you extend the terms for basically what's a shared savings program. Number two, this is off-balance sheet financing, so it does not go against your borrowing capacity. Think of it, again, as a service agreement. Number three, you can write them off as an operating expense. Number four, it really eliminates the risk because the savings are engineered and verified by a third party, and the equipment is owned by the service provider for the course of the term. So capital funding and term loans and leases still make good sense in today's economy. However, knowing that risk is mitigated using these alternative funding mechanisms, it's worth looking at all the options and finding out what makes sense for your business. Okay, moving on. Through the years, I've seen a great deal of energy project implementations that were ad hoc and clunky and led by a local electrician or a mechanical contractor to pick at low-hanging fruit with no real big picture view in mind. And I believe this is a big issue because these projects typically don't fit into a plan. They're more or less just ways to cut operating expenses. Today we'll look at a more calculated approach, the process of finding out how efficient your building is and creating a working energy management plan. So now we're going to go step back to EnergyStar, which we discussed up front. So the first step in the process is to benchmark your facility. This is a simple, non-invasive approach to determining your facility's efficiency. Usually it costs a couple $1,000s and takes a few hours of your time, but it could be free from an outfit that's looking to earn your business. The benefit of step one is you are provided with an energy report that tells you how efficient your building is. And from there, you can decide what needs to be done, if anything, to improve your building's performance. Step two, is to create an asset list and meter. So again, what we want to do is we want to collect visual, digestible data. Energy service companies will attempt to get an asset list from your maintenance staff. Basically, it's all of the equipment information from the different building systems. The smart meters that we discussed earlier cover up to 48 circuits in a panel and can be installed at a cost of about $2,000 or $3,000 per meter. And this will provide a wealth of data. Step three, here comes the energy audits and the leadership roundtable. You'll want your management team, including CFO and maintenance, to sit down with your energy services partner to review any existing energy management plans, past and current energy projects, and outline what an energy management plan could look like for your business. In terms of the energy audits, you want your partner to use the ASHRAE standards for auditing. ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. They're a 125-year-old organization, and they set the standards for building systems performance. They detail different levels of energy system audits. These are level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is basically a look-see, and number 2 is a little bit more in-depth, and number 3 is a full-blown building analysis. Step 4 is energy engineering. This is where the magic happens and leads to step 5, which is developing an energy management plan that includes retrofit or upgrade measures and all of the estimates, analysis, and incentives and paybacks that were determined in step 4 for all of the equipment, both individually and as a complete building. This plan will include renewable options and a milestones strategy, meaning maybe not all of the findings should be addressed sooner than later. Maybe you have another 5 years on that chiller and it doesn't even make sense to spend any money on it right now. Step number 6, review your plan assumptions and define an implementable scope of work with timelines. And then you present this final proposal to the utility and they will validate the savings and provide an incentive fund reservation. After utility funds are reserved, it's really a matter of determining which funding mechanism works best for you and finding the right turnkey provider to make these installations happen. At the end, there'll be a link where you can download some information, including the EPA EnergyStar guidelines for energy management. It's a rather long document, but it's well worth its weight in gold. So now we're going to take several moments to discuss some of the energy projects mentioned in our story and how they can fit into your facilities. Now, when we talk about the investment models of these different types of energy efficiency or energy conservation measures or renewable projects, we need to consider the following variables. Number 1 is regional cost of electricity. Obviously, it's different all over the country, and it dramatically affects payback periods. Number 2, every utility has different rates and different rate structures. And then they add in things like demand charges, demand locking, ratcheting demand, and all of the myriads of tariffs that go along with your energy bill. Being that most of you are charged differently, again, this affects the paybacks. Number 3 is utility incentives. These are pools of money collected by the utilities from their customers in all sectors over the years. These monies go to help pay for energy projects. And let me repeat the important part here. If there's a program available from your utility to help pay for energy projects, then that means that you have paid into this fund, probably for a number of years in the form of a tariff. A lot of times it's called the DSM, Demand Side Management Rider, or something similar. It would be under the tariff section. And just to double back, since you've been paying into this fund, you owe it to your business to get that money back out. Number 4 is run rates. That is the time that the system is on, or in the case of like PV or solar, the amount of sun available for a particular region or time of the year. Number 5 is regional labor rates. While this isn't a project killer, it's something to consider, and it can vary the overall cost and payback of these projects. Number 6 is project scope pricing, meaning am I installing 50 fixtures or 500 fixtures over multiple facilities? So if you're implementing multiple measures, you will likely save on project management and installation costs. Taking into account all of these variables, I'm going to give you what I refer to as pocket paybacks for the measures that I laid out in the story and some other ones. Pocket meaning these are ranges given as a starting point. If we were to talk one-on-one, I could score your variables on a scale of 1 to 5. For instance, New England would score a 4 because of their high cost of electricity and their current incentive programs, but -1 because lighting incentives are starting to go away in this area. Same thing with California. So if you're in the Southeast, it's around a 2 because of the low cost of electricity and the low amount of incentives and so on. So keep in mind that these are generalities because utilities and states can incentivize differently at certain times in the year or from year to year, and will sometimes offer bonus incentives. So it's good to reach out to your utility and ask them to keep you informed. So let's take a look at low-hanging fruit, LED lighting, benefits and paybacks. From the conversations that I've had, the majority of you have already upgraded to LED lighting, but for those who haven't, we'll talk briefly about what you can expect. LED lighting uses about 75% of the energy of HID lighting. So think of the old lighting in your CEW or parking lot lights. And if you combine sensors, occupancy sensors or daylight harvesting sensors or any other kind of lighting control, you can reduce the lighting cost by about 90%. LED lights use about 50% of the energy fluorescent, whether it's T8 or T5. And keep in mind that light produces heat, so the more efficient a light is, the less heat it puts off. And since most of you are operating refrigerated spaces, LED offers not only a significant watt-for-watt reduction, but also emits 40 to 80% less heat than older technology, which means AC and refrigeration compressors run less, and that's what we refer to as compounded savings. Now, as many of you know, LED lighting has reached a point at which the efficacy, or lumens per watt, is 2 to 3 times that of fluorescent, making it fairly affordable and mainstream. The future of lighting, we believe, will be in controls. Controls that turn on or off or dim for occupancy or vacancy, controls that measure daylight that comes through the windows, or varying levels of darkness and vacancy for outdoor lighting. Having the ability to set your lights on predetermined timers with occupancy sensors that override is extremely beneficial and will pay back many times over the life of the project. Return on investment for LED lighting alone is typically in the 2 to 4 year range, and that can include simple controls. Now, adding a complex control system will usually increase the payback by a year or two, but it will add significant cumulative savings over the 10 to 20 years, and it's really worth the upfront investment. And building automation controls can really add a significant flair and creature comfort to a building and help shave wasted energy from your lighting and HVAC system. Now let's talk about refrigeration and warehouse cooling. If your CEWs and draft coolers are refrigerated, then your cost per square foot to operate is much higher than your peers who are using medium temperature air conditioning to cool their main warehouses, and roughly 2 to 3 times more. This is due to the components and their design. Now, older systems have inefficient evaporators that run all the time, single-speed compressors, and condenser motors that are also not efficient. The first thing to look at is evaporator fan motor replacement and adding controls. Variable speed EC motors are twice as efficient as a split capacitor motor or a three-phase motor, and controllers read the flow of refrigerant and place the fan motors on a high or low speed if the compressor is on or off. It's typically half the time. So this is a major savings. The condenser fan motors can also be replaced with variable speed EC motors and can be staged so that a group of motors turn on, all in varying ways that allows for minimum energy consumption. Variable speed screw or scroll compressors are now the standard in new systems. They use brushless permanent magnet motors that precisely adjust to cooling loads. Now, paybacks on refrigeration projects are, for the evaporators, usually either side of 2 years. Condenser and compressor projects, typically in the 3 to 5 year range. Again, these paybacks are all based upon those variables that I discussed earlier. Some of the tweaks that can positively affect your refrigeration system with a very quick payback are retrocommissioning, which is thoroughly examining the equipment for correct operation and restoring the units back to the original manufacturer operational specifications. Number 2 is reducing the minimum condensing pressure and defrost condensing pressure. Number 3 is night and weekend suction pressure setbacks. For those of you who are on chiller systems, since they are very rarely running at full load, there can be a great deal of savings in these systems. First and foremost, the flow rate must be measured and determined to maintain the optimal delta T to operate at peak efficiency. A Belimo energy valve is a good retrofit for this. Increasing the chill water temperature is a small but effective efficiency measure. And furthermore, ongoing cleaning and a water treatment program can drastically improve efficiency. Finally, a refrigerant analysis can determine the oil content level in the refrigerant, and if it's removed, it will become more efficient. Chiller efficiencies can pay for themselves in as little as a couple years. Complete replacements of these chiller units could have 5 to 10 year payback. But considering the reduced maintenance and downtime, that could significantly make up the difference in payback for you. For those of you who have medium temperature or air-controlled CEWs fed by rooftop units, these units are typically single zone and can benefit greatly by adding variable frequency drives and economizers and a control system to check and adjust for efficiency. Again, retrocommissioning is important to do on these units. It can save an average of 20% on energy use, and it looks at issues like subcooling, superheat, and refrigerant charge. It looks at problems like expansion valve issues that could lead to compressor failure and general problems with the refrigeration circuit or the economizer and system airflow. This process can also improve system reliability and equipment lifespans. Paybacks on rooftop units to be retrofitted can be as little as 1 to 2 years. As for comfort heating and cooling, the same goes for package heating and cooling rooftop units for offices and other areas. Once assessed, these units should be retrocommissioned if they're over a few years old. In the event that they are at the end of life, the efficiency of replacement units coupled with the utility incentives could make for attractive paybacks on the new equipment. Now, for those of you with boilers, adding an economizer will capture wasted hot flue gas and heat the feed water for the boiler. These are quick return projects and can be complemented by lowering stack pressure, again, installing variable frequency drives, and making sure that you have the proper insulation in place. You could expect paybacks of roughly 2 to 4 years on boiler retrofits. Many people talk about lighting and HVAC being the low-hanging fruit, which I would generally agree to. We've mentioned retro-commissioning over the past few minutes, and I'd really like to take a moment to explain it better. This is the process of restoring a building's original design performance. In a retro-commissioning study, an energy engineer assesses all systems in a building, as well as the building envelope. The study's findings for inefficiencies can sometimes be carried out during the actual on-site evaluation. Many building envelope fixes can be identified during this study. Examples of other items are HVAC calibration or sequencing, cleaning filters, sealant and weather stripping, and so on. Improvements on indoor air quality, equipment life, safety, maintenance, and productivity are often commonly recognized as a result of retro-commissioning. I cannot stress enough, if you have not done this, or if you haven't done it in the last 7 years or so, do it soon. It can help out in ways that you can only imagine. Costs are generally $1 to $2 per square foot and can easily yield returns of 2 months to 2 years. Now, again, the cost of $1 to $2 per square foot is based upon just the study itself. Another thing to look at is improving forklift battery charging systems. Upgrading battery chargers to the newest technology will improve charging times and cycles and battery management with power conversions efficiencies of 60 to 90%. The payback on a charger system will depend heavily on the current equipment efficiency, but it's worth performing an analysis to see if it makes financial sense to upgrade. Okay, let's move on to renewables. For your facilities, we'll only cover the ones that seem to be a good fit. Technologies like hydrogen fuel cells and biomass aren't really relatable to your process, so we'll move on to the short list. Number one, of course, is solar. And depending upon where you are in the country, it could be photovoltaic solar, which is electric solar, solar hot air, or solar hot water. Photovoltaic, or PV, panels generate electricity, but may not be suitable for everyone. The way we look at it is, if you have a suitable facility, a decent amount of sun hours per year, coupled with at least some state or utility and benefits, these systems should have a return of between 5 and 10 years. And in some areas like New England, renewable energy credits and utility incentives are now bringing these investment paybacks down to as low as 2 years. There are several considerations to determining if PV is a good fit for your facility and business. If you're looking at a roof-mounted system, you need to ask, will it carry the weight of the system? And also, is it possible to avoid roof penetrations so you avoid future leaks? Do you get high winds that could cause damage to the system? Or do you have ample land space near your building with little tree coverage to place a system? And what is the warranty on the panels and the inverters? You should look for a 25-year warranty on panels and 10-year on inverters. And this question commonly comes up, should we install a battery backup? Well, this will add a significant project cost with no payback. Unless you have frequent power outages, the battery power to run the base load of the building could easily pay for itself in 1 or 2 major outages. And another question that gets asked is, how big of a system should I be looking at? And so here is the chart to make it make sense. A 10 kW system or a 20 kW is decent for a beer facility. Photovoltaic electric vehicle charging stations, they're becoming a hot topic. They are widely incentivized by utilities all over, especially the last couple of years. Whether it's your own fleet of electric vehicles or your employees or your customers, these charging stations are the mall kiosks of the future. There's a myriad of state and localized grants, as well as state and utility incentives to install EV charging stations. And powering them with a parking lot PV roof rack system provides shade for the cars below and plenty of eye candy for customers and the community. Shifting gears just a bit, it is rather uncommon nowadays that we hear about solar hot air and hot water systems, but they are prevalent in areas of the world that have a high cost of electricity or gas. These are simple systems that basically collect solar energy in a panel to heat air in a chamber or water in a piping system, and they send that energy into the building using pumps. These systems can have a useful life of 15 to 25 years, so even though the paybacks can range from 2 to 8 years, they can provide significant returns over decades of use with very few moving parts to replace. So second on the renewables list is geothermal. Geothermal heating and cooling use earth temperature for heat exchange. There's a graphic here that'll kind of show you the process of what that looks like. And while some areas of the country experience extreme climates, temperatures underground remain constant no matter where you are. These systems rely on heat transfer between the air and the ground to provide heating and cooling to buildings. In a geothermal HVAC system, an electronically powered heat pump cycles refrigerant through the long loops of underground pipes. It is through this process that heat is transferred from ambient air in the building to the ground and vice versa. These systems are 4 times more efficient than the efficient gas furnaces that are out there today, and they can pay back in as little as 6 to 8 years, depending upon the many factors involved. It's a great investment for new construction, but it can also be added to a building when the current system is at end of life. And geothermal can also contribute to cooling to the warehouse areas of the building. Many people think of the large windmill type units found in the plains areas of the country, but small vertical axis wind turbines are available for more urban settings. Here's a picture of the different types of vertical axis wind turbines. And these designs differ based upon different wind speed ranges and also the aesthetics. Assuming you have a proper site for a turbine, average payback for installed unit can be in the 5 to 7 year range, but a location with a high wind speed coupled with a high cost of electricity and feed-in tariffs can result in paybacks as little as 3 years. And the great thing about these devices is that they're fairly inexpensive. A 5 kW turbine can be purchased for about $15,000. And they make an obvious statement when placed in your parking lot or on the front of the building. We'll talk briefly about on-site cogeneration, as it is a growing topic of discussion amongst large public and private organizations. CHP, also known as combined heat and power, typically uses gas to fire a turbine, and that turbine turns a generator to create electricity, and it captures the exhaust or the hot gases for some kind of useful thermal energy. It can be used for process heating or cooling or comfort heating or cooling. The takeaways from this technology are that number one, it's not renewable, but it can be a great source of baseload power, meaning the power that it takes to run your facility when you're closed or you have little operations. So that's a wrap on the energy measures that we'll cover today. If you would like to continue learning, please check out the Efficiency Equals Profitability podcast, where I interview energy pros from across the country. They all have a specific niche that they work in. It's a good way to learn about more specific energy measures and learn from their experiences in the industry. Again, I hope you've gained some valuable insight into how energy efficiency and renewables can positively transform your business. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you'd like some advice or help with your energy projects. I am Shawn Verbrugghe on LinkedIn, or you can reach me at shawn@hotwattenergy.com. A list of the resources from this presentation can be found at hotwattenergy.com/NBWA. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this year's NBWA convention. I look forward to seeing you next year in person. Take care.